Hi guys, guess who I found? Quentin Wilson. Yes, the legend who is Quentin Wilson. He's actually doing stuff with me here at the London EV show. You're here to do a conference. I know you've just given an interview on EVs, so let's just briefly touch on that. Because if you ask me about Quentin Wilson, I'd say you're the used car guy, the classic car guy. What are you doing with EVs?
Well, because while I was doing all that used car stuff and classic car stuff and performance car stuff, I was buying EVs with my own money and driving them because as an opinion former, it was really important to me to see how these things worked. Did they work? Were they reliable? Did the batteries last? And that was kind of 9 years ago, 10 years ago. And here we are, and I've had 7 EVs over that decade, and they all work. So it's really important for someone like me to be able to say, right, I am going to try this new technology out because it's potentially game-changing, and I'm so glad I did, and did all those charge cycles and all those cold cars because you couldn't put the heater on, because they work. And here we are now with cars that'll do 300 miles to one charge and are faster than a Ferrari.
You know, I started off as an EV skeptic myself, and I'm kind of being swayed towards it. I've tested more EVs, new cars, this year than I have tested in the entire previous 3 decades that I've been reviewing cars. And one of the cars that I tested quite recently was a Porsche 356 that had been converted to electric. What do you make of those?
I think they're great. And look, they cost a lot of money, but if people want to do that, absolutely, it's fine. And if you keep the parts, you keep the engine, the gearbox, and you can reinstate them, then that's fine. It'll keep that car going. It'll give it a new lease of life. It'll set an example, and you won't be chugging out lots of fumes.
I mean, as an authority on classic cars, I mean, when I put up this video that I did on the 356, I did get quite a bit of hate because people were like, "What have you done? This is sacrilege."
I did one on a Mercedes 350 SL, and that had been converted, and I did it in Classic Car magazine that I write for, and people did not like it at all. But look, I would say never convert something that is hugely valuable or irreplaceable. But workaday cars, not the 356s, perhaps workaday, but there are enough of them about that it's not an act of sacrilege. And the 107 SL, yeah, look, we can change those, because the more we do that, the more we'll learn and establish an industry where we can keep these cars running. Because the biggest barrier to this, is going to be fuel. And there'll come a time where fuel for classic cars will be even more expensive than it is now, and it will have to be with the super fuels, and we could be paying 3-4 quid a gallon, and it's going to be finding the fuels, which is going to be difficult because not every filling station will have them. So it's worth trying to get this industry established now.
You know, I often equate it to, if you've seen Back to the Future, you remember when they go to the future and all the cars have been converted into flying cars. It feels the same thing, doesn't it, really?
It does, kind of. I mean, and I compare driving, because I drove my Tesla down to London and then came back and then got into my wife's Land Rover or Range Rover Sport, and the difference is incredible. It's like a jet comparing a Cessna. And I mean, the Tesla is so smooth, it's so fast, it's so silent, and the diesel Range Rover is kind of a lump now. It feels dated.
Well, you do like a bit of a burble, don't you?
Yeah, I do like a V8, and I've got a little 64 Mustang in my garage with its V8 engine, but I only do, a few hundred miles a year, so I'm no threat to the environment. And look, classic cars will never ever disappear. I think the more EVs there are around, the more we will appreciate and value classic cars.
I agree. Moving to something else completely. You and I, maybe unknowing to you, but you say you remember, we did kind of work together because I was deputy editor on a magazine called Used Car Buyer in the mid-2000s, and you were a columnist on that. Yeah. What do you think, that feels like a generation ago now. How do you think the automotive media has progressed since then, both print and digital?
I think print obviously has declined significantly, which is a great shame, because your magazine was very lush and it was wonderful. You spent a lot on photography and it was cutting edge, and it told you a lot of stuff that you didn't know. And I miss that, being able to go to a newsstand and leaf through it and etc. But progress, reading it on an iPad isn't the same, and it's such a shame. Digital media has expanded, but I think we've lost the quality because there is no money in motoring journalism right now. And it's so
Tell me about it.
I know. And with everybody on YouTube, and we've lost an appetite for car shows as well. We really do need to get that back, because say what you like about Clarkson, he was the best, the absolute best, and for a long time Top Gear was the market leader globally by a huge, huge margin. And I remember going to John Burt one day, the head of the BBC, and I said, "What's our global reach, John?" And he comes back with this figure of like 400 million people watch Top Gear every week. And so it was massively, massively influential. And it was also a force for good, force for change, block exemption, I brought that in. So we don't pay more than European people for new cars, and taught people about service histories, how to look for cars. So it was really, really an important period. And I'd like to have a mainstream television program back that would do that and would talk about EVs, but in a kind of not dull way, but an expert way. Because the great thing about Top Gear was we knew what we were talking about. There was no doubt at all about that. And I remember car manufacturers would say to us on Thursday, because it used to go out at Thursday at 8:30, on Thursday at 8:30 we reached for the Valium.
I can totally understand that. And of course, you mentioned Clarkson, but not to underplay your own contribution, because you were an absolute font of wisdom and advice and guidance during that time. That's when the program actually told you a lot, and it's moved far. It's a nice, entertaining program, but it's moved far from that. Do you think that actually we need another show like that again?
I think we do, because cars, whether you like them or not, are going to hang around for a lot longer, because if it comes to mass transportation, the most efficient way of doing that is a box with 5 seats and 4 wheels. It doesn't matter how it's powered. So cars are going to be here, and we need somebody who talks expertly about this. And I think really we've had too long of 4 wheels bad, 2 wheels good. So there's been this ideological thing. So you'll go to a commissioning editor at a broadcaster who will be maybe 27, 28. There'll be a fold-up bicycle in the office. They haven't got a driving license. So pitching a program about classic cars or electric cars, and they'll say, have you got anything on dating or antiques or makeovers? And that's a big problem, and I think there's a large body of people out there who still want to know what to buy. A man came up to me in Waitrose the other day, kind of white-faced and shaking, and said, "Mr. Wilson, I just need to say this to you. You told me to buy a Sierra RS 500 on Top Gear." So I did that, and my wife said I was mad. But we've just sold it for 120,000 and paid off our mortgage. And you see, that's wonderful.
Isn't that awesome when that happens? And it has happened to me a few times as well. But you've also not just, obviously you help people, you've advised people, but you've also campaigned on behalf of the motorists as well, haven't you?
Yeah, the Fair Fuel campaign, which ran from 2011 to it's still running now, saved 120 billion in fuel duty and VAT. Now that money went back into the economy instead of back into the treasury. And some people say, well, it should have gone into other things. But look, this was, in a period 2011 onwards where we were financially, pretty dodgy. And the Treasury said the effects of Fair Fuel will be felt for decades to come. And even The Guardian, who are not a fan of cars or car drivers, said it was the most successful lobbying campaign in British modern political history. So I make no apologies about that, because it was really important to keep the price of fuel down. You look at it now, and what are we, 145, 147, 150?
I don't want to look at it.
It's not going down, and there is no kind of lid on it. And I've had to move from Fair Fuel onto Fair Charge, because I just don't think we can now say we subsidise fossil fuels. It's wrong, where we have the technology now to have zero emission cars.
Just sticking with fossil fuel for a minute, I get a lot of people who read my content, consume my content, like, should we buy a car now? Should we just wait? Because everybody's a little bit uncertain about what's going to happen in 2030. And some people say, look, if I buy a car now, will I lose money? And I'm like, well, some cars could actually be an investment, couldn't they?
You're talking about electric cars?
In both cases, because surely we are at the dying embers of the petrol car now, right?
Yes, we are. And yeah, if you were to buy, let's think, any Mustang, I think, with the 5-litre Toyota engine. Now we're talking V8s. He's got me onto V8s now.
Why not? Why not?
With the 5-litre Coyote engine, that's going to go up in value because it's just such a great car. And we've seen the price of Mustangs go really, really quite high, and they will start to climb even further as there are less of them available. But then the same is true with EVs. You know, if you can get hold of a Model S Plaid, that's never going to go down in value, is it? And things like, you know, the Model 3 Performance is going to become a cult car because it was one of the first ones and because it is so devastatingly quick. So look, identify these cars and they will go up in value. And you just like the Mercedes SLS with its gull-wing doors. Well, that came out in what, 2010? I had one for 2 years and I sold it for more or less what I paid for it and thought I'd done really, really well. Well, since then, they've gone up and up and up. 120, 140, 150, and then one was sold the other day, a low mileage one, for 200 grand. You can spot these cars. These are icons, these are legends. And because of those show-stopping doors, the SLS was always going to be the one. And the man who knows so much about used cars didn't keep his, he sold it.
So just on that note, let's sticking with classic cars and sticking with that stuff. Hot tips for 2022 for investing and buying.
Oh, it's really, really hard. So look, what happens with the market is it has peaks and troughs, and there are certain cars like E-Types, early E-Types, 61, 62, 3.8s, flat floors, which will always be coveted because, you know, like the West End of London, they don't make E-Types anymore, so that's why they will go up in value. Like a Ferrari 250 GTE, which you know, for a long time was in the doldrums at £50,000. They're now really, really, really climbing, and there'll come a day quite soon where a 250 Ferrari in good nick will be £500,000. The GT. I'm not talking about the Testosses or the race cars, but just an ordinary 2+2. Let's look at XK150s. You know, XK150 convertibles, undervalued. You can buy them for £70,000, £80,000. They will double because they are what they are. They're terribly glamorous. There are so few of them. The tip with classic cars, though, is buy the best you can. Don't buy a project because it'll always cost you more than you bargained for. Buy one that has had everything done for it. You might think you're paying a little bit more, but it will go. Sunbeam Tigers, you know, again, Jensen Interceptors, again, they're going to go. Look at the price of a DB5 or a DB4 compared to an Interceptor. You buy an Interceptor for 25 grand. Fabulous car, and they will start going up. So if it's sexy, if it's got a great image, if it's been completely restored, and you look at it and you think, actually, you know, that feels, and it's the heart does it, that feels good value, then you're there.
You've got to relate to the car, haven't you? I think that's key. Quentin, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today, and also thank you for doing everything that you do. It's really appreciated.
Look, it's fun. I mean, you know, I love it, and I've managed to make a career out of it, and here we are in a new generation, which is going to be more exciting, I think, than the last one. You know, we will have such technological power in these cars that they will be breathtakingly quick and fun to drive. So, you know, I've lived through this golden age of the motor car, and we're going into another golden age of the motor car. So it's great.
It is great. And finally, just let everybody know which YouTuber they should follow. Hint, he's brown.
Brown Car Guy. You heard it here first.
A big shout out and thanks to Jay Williams over at Airtechnik, who are my top tier sponsors. Check them out for exhaust, brakes, suspension, and even body kits. Also, much appreciation to my tier 4 sponsors, Mohamed Ali Humaid and Tom Conway-Gordon. And of course, all of these other guys who have joined me on Patreon. Without their support, I can't be creating the content that I am doing. Perhaps you can join them. Head over to patreon.com/browncarguy. Even if you can't do that, make sure you're subscribing and sharing this channel, which of course is youtube.com/browncarguy. Also subscribe to browncarguy.com and follow me on all the socials. Just search for my hashtag, which of course is #BrownCarGuy.